So hi friends, so I'm back with another video. This time the topic is performance prism. So a very new topic. It's a kind of what do you call the new generation topic. So this particular topic is part and parcel of performance evaluation chapter when it comes to CA final new syllabus. Okay, so this exclusive for CA final new syllabus students. And in general, anybody who would like to know this particular topic, this video will be useful for sure, right? Okay, so without wasting any further time, let's go with it. When it comes to CA final students, you have a case study based on this particular concept. So that's why first I'm going with the concepts and then I'll go with the case study shortly. Right, guys? So without wasting any further time, let's start. So first of all, there were two people, Andy Neely and Chris Adams, who has actually gave this performance prism as a second generation performance management framework. So the word they've used is second generation. Generally, we'll be using this word like first generation, second generation when it comes to internet, some smartphones, some bikes, stuff like that. So these guys they say that performance prism is a second generation performance management framework. What do you mean by that? The first generation basically belongs to balance scorecard. I hope some of you are aware of it, and performance pyramid. Okay, these concepts I have not yet covered, but those who are in touch with these concepts, you will understand that these were the first generation management frameworks where it helps you to analyze the performance of a particular employee as well as the company as a whole, the management as a whole. So these were typically a first generation management framework methods, whereas the second generation is performance prism. Okay, so if you those who have an idea with respect to what is balance scorecard and performance pyramid, I think you'll be appreciating this particular video a lot better. But nevertheless, those who don't have any idea with respect to what is balance scorecard and what is performance pyramid, doesn't matter, still you'll be able to follow, right? But just listen the total lecture carefully. Now what these guys they say that is Neely and Adams, they say that performance prism as a second generation performance management framework, they claim that there are three major reasons why the new framework is needed to replace the first generation models, such as the balance scorecard as well as performance pyramid. So what are the reasons? That first of all, let's try to understand. There are first generation models and there is second generation model. The first generation models are, as I told you already, balanced scorecard, and another one is performance pyramid, and the second generation model is performance prism. Okay. Now these guys they give us three reasons why they say the new framework or the second generation model of performance prism is very much required, and it has to replace what the first generation models, that is balance scorecard as well as performance pyramid. So let's try to understand the reasons first. Okay, chalo, let's move on. Reason number one: it is no longer acceptable or even feasible for organizations to focus completely on the need of one or two stakeholder groups. So most performance measurement frameworks focus on the needs of the owners and the possibly maybe the customers of the organization. They neglect the other stakeholders. So entire focus is basically on, if you look at balance scorecard also, the entire focus is on owners, customers, mostly owners and customers, but they totally ignore the other stakeholders. So what do you mean by other stakeholders? The other stakeholders actually mean employees, suppliers. Okay, employees, suppliers. So what these guys they say is that this particular first generation models, that is balance scorecard and performance pyramid, is no longer acceptable because it focuses only on the needs of the owners as well as what customers of the organization, but they totally ignore the needs of the employees as well as what suppliers, who are also the stakeholders of the organization, right? This is reason number one. Reason number two, most of the performance measurement frameworks like the balance scorecard and the performance pyramid, they ignore the changes that must be made to the organization's strategies, processes, and capabilities in order to meet the needs of the stakeholders. These guys they ignore who, where. One is balance scorecard, and the other one is what? Performance pyramid. So what he says is that it is assumed in an implied way that if you measure the right things, the rest will fall into the place automatically. That is often not the case. So always the too much of concentration is on measurement with respect to what balance scorecard as well as performance pyramid. And what these guys they say is that see, too much of concentration on measurement is not going to work in a right way, because they feel that all they assume that if you measure the right things, then automatically the other things will fall into place. But in reality that's not happening. As a result, they say that this particular first generation models, they ignore uh, the changes that must be made to the organization's strategies, processes, and capabilities, which is really required in order to meet the needs of the stakeholders, which the first generation models is not looking into. And that's the reason they say the second generation model, that is performance prism, is very much needed right now. And the third reason, what they say is that all the stakeholders must contribute something to the organization, obviously. So they say that there is a quid pro quo relationship between the organization and its stakeholders. What is that? Quid pro quo. I hope many of you know this because it's a pretty famous term. So there is a quid pro quo relationship between the organization and its stakeholders, and the stakeholders will expect something from the organization, but the organization also wants to give something in return. So performance measurement basically should consider whether such stakeholders are delivering what the organization wants from them, isn't it? So organization wants to deliver something to these stakeholders. At the same time, you must also see whether are you getting all the things that you need from those stakeholders, isn't it? So both the sides of the coin must be taken into consideration. Okay, right. So here are the three reasons why they say that the second generation model is very much important, right? And also these guys they believe that, who are they? One is Neely and the other one is Adams. Okay, they also believe that many organizations in recent years have become obsessed with measurement. So they've become so obsessed with measurement. All the organization, their primary concern is to measure, measure, measure. What measure? Management are measuring too many things in the belief that by doing so, they must be controlling their organization well. This trend have been really confounded by the development of sophisticated IT systems, and they'll provide a whole lot of reports to the management. So the problem with this is increase in measurement is that management starts to micromanage their organization, and they will lose their sight or their concentration on the strategic side of the management. Strategic side of the management is very important. So you are trying to give too much importance with respect to what micromanagement of your organization, and you're losing what strategic side of the management. And one more important thing is that there is also the cost of providing the information, right? So when you're getting information by way of measuring things, and then you're getting lots of reports because of this robust IT system and all, and there's a cost of providing such information, and the management is trying to spend some time on that particular reports, even that is also has got a cost. And besides that, you should ask what are the benefits that this sort of measurement is actually bringing to the company. Everybody must ask that, isn't it? So, I'll repeat it one more time. The problem with this increase in measurement is that management starts to micromanage their organizations and lose sight on the strategic side of the management. Okay? There is always a cost for providing the information, and the management is spending time on it, and you should compare it with the kind of benefits that these measurement is actually bringing. Okay? So the point that they would like to tell is that yeah, Neely and Adams, they say that management do not need more reports. Okay, They just need to know what is going on in the business, and there should be a process of gathering management information and not simply what measuring them. Okay, right. Anyway, so these are all the pretty much dry topics that we have seen so far, but anyway, we should know about it. Now we'll go to the main thing. What are they? The 5 facets of Prism is the most important topic. Now we are actually getting into the topic. So the performance prism aims to manage the performance of an organization from 5 interrelated facets. Okay. So what are those facets? Let's see one by one. The first one is they try to concentrate on, they try to achieve stakeholder satisfaction. This is the first facet of performance prism. Second one is stakeholder contribution. Third one is concentrate on strategies. Fourth one is concentrate on processes. And last one is capabilities. I'll just give you a basic idea regarding all these things. So, what do you mean by stakeholder satisfaction? Who are our stakeholders? What do they want? Again, I'll repeat. What do you mean by stakeholder satisfaction? The question that you need to ask yourself is you means company. Who are our stakeholders? What do they want? And what about the stakeholder contribution? What do we want and need from our stakeholders? So company also has to think that what do we want and need from our stakeholders. And the third one is strategies. So what do you mean by strategies? What strategies do we need to put in place to satisfy the wants and the needs of our stakeholders while satisfying our own requirements, right? And coming on to the next one, it is processes. What process do we need to put in place to enable us or help us to execute our strategies? And last but not least, what do you mean by capabilities? What capabilities do we need to put in place to allow us to operate our processes? Got the point? So these are all the targets, or we can say 5 facets of Prism. Let me quickly go through a particular slide so that it will help you, right? Have a look into the slide, Nana. This is what is called the 5 facets of performance prism. As you can see, one is stakeholder satisfaction, the other one is processes, the other one is strategies, then you have capabilities, and then you have got stakeholder contribution. Now, you may be wondering what's actually, why there is a word called prism, why this is referred as performance prism. Okay, please understand. A prism basically refracts light, isn't it? It illustrates the hidden complexity of something as apparently simple as white light. So it is with the performance prism, it illustrates the true complexity of performance management as well as measurement. So which means if you can look at the prism, it actually reflects the light, isn't it? So a simple white light is made so complicated and it tries to show what is hidden. Similarly, performance prism also helps you to understand the true complexity of performance measurement as well as management inside the company. That's why it is named as performance prism. And I would like to repeat the other things one more time. What are the 5 facets of your performance prism? One is stakeholder satisfaction. What do you mean by that? Who are our stakeholders and what do they want and need? Second one is stakeholder contribution. So, what do you mean by that? What do we want and need from our stakeholders? And the third one is strategies. It means what strategies do we need to put in place to satisfy these wants and needs of different stakeholders? And the next one is processes. So processes means what process do we need to put in place to satisfy these sets of wants and needs. And finally, capabilities. What capabilities, the types of people, the bundles of people, practices, technology, infrastructure, do we need to put in place to allow us to operate our processes more effectively as well as efficiently? So these are all the questions that you have to ask. Okay, together these 5 viewpoints provide a comprehensive and integrated framework for managing an organizational performance. And by answering the related questions, organization can build a structured business performance model. That's what the whole intention behind this performance prism. Are you able to get me right? Okay, chalo. So now what we would like to do is that we'll try to look into each and every perspective. As you know, we have 5 different perspectives here. One is stakeholder satisfaction, the other one is stakeholder contribution, strategies, processes, and then capabilities. We'll try to see one by one. Okay. So first, what we'd like to do is that we'll try to start with stakeholder satisfaction, right? We'll look into that, and then we'll get into stakeholder contribution, and then so on. Okay. Chalo. Let's start, Nana. Let me change the slide. I'll get back to the word. Yeah. Now let's move on. Now listen carefully. Okay, let's start with the first facet. What is that? Stakeholder satisfaction. What is that, Nana? Stakeholder satisfaction, right? Okay, chalo. Let's try to understand this. Now listen carefully. The first facet of the prism focuses on who are the stakeholders. This is the first question you have to ask. Who are the stakeholders? Okay. And the second thing is, what do they want? You got to answer yourself these questions. Here, what you basically need to do is that the importance of stakeholder mapping is the thing that they are trying to consider. Now, the biggest question is, what do you mean by stakeholder mapping? Okay, stakeholder mapping means identifying the key stakeholders and determining how important each of them are to the organization. That's what you mean stakeholder mapping. What do you mean by that, Nana? Stakeholder mapping means identifying the key stakeholders and determining how important each of them are to the organization. This stakeholder mapping is done by asking these two questions. One is who are the stakeholders, and the other one is what do they want. Now, now the question is, if you want to do the stakeholder mapping, means you want to identify the key stakeholders and determine how important each of them to the organization, then this may be based on how much power they have and whether or not they are likely to use it and all these perspectives. So if the majority of the employees, or for example, let's take see, when you have to do stakeholder mapping, you need to understand how important they are to the organization, isn't it? In that case, you will try to identify what is the power they have, right? And first of all, do they have power or not? And the second thing is, once they have power, whether they would like to use it or not. So in that case, let's take an example. If majority of the employers are members of trade union, if majority of the employers are members of trade union, for example, then it is likely that the trade union will hold significant influence over the organization, isn't it? So that you can understand through stakeholder mapping, and that's the reason we are doing it. Okay. Now, one more important thing is that if any organization or any company do not keep the most influential stakeholder groups happy, then obviously what will happen? You have an important stakeholder or influential stakeholder for your company, and you don't keep them happy. You don't keep them happy. Then what will happen? This will have impact on what? Financial performance in the long run. Obviously, okay, this will have impact on the financial performance in the long run. Why? Because all these dissatisfied employees, what will happen is that, for example, they'll be less motivated, or they may leave the organization, causing what will happen once they leave the organization? Your expenses of hiring and training new employees, right? All these things will increase, hiring as well as what? Training new employees. And organization needs to identify the most important stakeholders and what they want from the organization. Otherwise, these kind of problems will keep on coming. If you don't identify them, you don't give them what they want, it will have very detrimental impact on your organization. Thereby, they'll be dissatisfied, they'll try to leave, and again, you have to spend money on hiring and then again train them. It's a really hectic task. Okay. So let's try to understand, because ultimately the objective of the first perspective is what? Stakeholder satisfaction. Let's get into that. So let's try to understand what are the majority of the stakeholders of an organization and what they might want typically. That's what we are trying to understand. Okay. So first, still we are in the first part here. You will have investors, then you'll have customers. I'm talking about the stakeholders. then you'll have employees, then you'll have suppliers, then of course last but not least you have regulators. Now let's start with investors. So we are trying to understand what are the major stakeholders of the organization and what they might want from us typically. Typically means in general. So when I say investors, I'm talking about both the debt as well as equity investors. So what they typically want is that they want a return on their investment in the form of capital gains, maybe a reward from in the form of dividends, interest, etc. Now, what about customers? They want fast, right, cheap, and easy products, right? Coming on to employees, they seek some sort of interesting work. They want the work to be really interesting, all the employees, and they wish to be cared for by their employee. They want their employee to care for them, and if these things are really followed by them, then I mean, or really achieved by them, then employees will be happy. Then you have suppliers. What do the suppliers want? They want a relationship that allows them to be profitable, obviously. Otherwise, nobody is willing to do business. And it also enables their business to grow, isn't it? So they want to be trusted. The most important thing when it comes to supplier is the trust, and you have to give them the trust. Otherwise, they'll get hurt. And last but not least, we have these regulators. They want organization to be, I mean, to act legally. Obviously, regulators, that's what they want. To act fairly, okay, to act safely, okay, to act truly, report truly their actual activities, which means legal, fair, safe, and true. Okay, right. So these are all the expectations of the stakeholders. We have just seen the expectations of each and every stakeholder in depth, right? Let's move on to the next one. The next one is, okay, these are all the first thing that we have seen is the first facet is these are all the things that stakeholders are expecting from us and we are trying to deliver them. Okay, fine, so that we are able to satisfy them. So ultimate target is stakeholder satisfaction. Now at the same time, it should be two way. The other side of the coin is what the company expects from their stakeholders. So let's go with that one, which is nothing but stakeholder contribution. So let's try to understand what the company is expecting. Now, listen carefully. Organizations are becoming more and more demanding in what they expect from their own stakeholders. Okay. In the second facet of the performance prism, which we are seeing right now, users need to identify exactly what is that the organization wants from those stakeholders. And then you try to come up with some sort of ways such that we measure whether or not the stakeholders are providing it back to the organization, right? Let's take an example to help you understand better. A good example is customers. Okay. Many earlier performance measurement frameworks, such as the balance scorecard, do ask, what do the balance scorecard ask? What do our customers want from us? Isn't it? That's what balance scorecard says. What does balance scorecard says? What do our customers want from us? This is what balanced scorecard says. Okay. But the balance scorecard does not consider another angle. What is another angle to the same story? Another angle is what do we want from our customers? Why do you see only one angle here? You look at the other angle. So balance scorecard says that what do the customers want from us? You see the other angle. What do we want from our customers? So organization normally want loyalty, isn't it? So any company they want what? Loyalty. That's the reason you always see whenever a new bike is launched. Okay, whenever a new bike, suppose Honda new bike is launched. Okay, a new model. Always they'll give discounts for those people who buy that particular new model bike in the first month. Have you ever thought of why any company provides discount in the first month of the launch of the new model or a new bike? The reason is who buys a new bike in the first month? Only those guys who have a brand loyalty with respect to Honda. So they believe that Honda has released something and definitely it has to be good. So Honda wants that kind of customers. So that's what. What do we want from our customers? This is what we want from our customer, isn't it? We want our customer to buy our bike by just looking at the Honda brand. Are you able to get me? By looking at the Honda brand, not the bike. Everybody will buy once the bike has been a hit, but we want loyalty. So that's what. So organization normally wants loyalty and profits from their customers, and many organizations have started to perform customer profitability analysis. There's a famous concept called customer profitability analysis. So they'll try to analyze each and every customer and such that they'll see which customer is giving them most profit, and accordingly they'll give more number of benefits to that particular customer. Frequently you will see this kind of things in banks. If you're really doing some sort of good transaction stuff like that, banks will give you exclusive loans and stuff like that. HDFC banks, my own example is there. Okay. And so some have found some surprising results. For example, customers who they thought were their most valuable turned out to be loss making. And when activity based approaches to customer profitability analysis were used, and customers whom they thought that they are not really providing any sort of profit to them, they actually turned out to be the most profitable guys. Okay, so customer profitability analysis is an example of how contribution from customers can be measured. And regarding the other major stakeholders groups, the following are the examples. For example, investors, they need capital for growth and the willingness to take on more risk. So the company wants their investors to give them capital for the growth of the company, and they want their investors to have willingness to take on more risk. And at the same time, the company wants their employees, the other stakeholders, to contribute in terms of providing more flexibility. They want their employees to be more flexible, and they want them to learn multiple skills. So the company or the organization wants their employees to learn multiple skills. And obviously the other one is, last but not least, we have regulators. So what do the companies want from regulators? Better understanding of the business sector and the ability to regulate across borders. Also, lack of bureaucracy, all those things. Okay. Right. So this is what the companies in return they want from their stakeholders. So we have seen two sides of the coin. In the first thing, we have seen what the stakeholders satisfaction. So which means what company has to do to the stakeholders. And in the second, we have seen the other side of the coin, where what the company will expect in return from the stakeholders, right? And let's move on to the third one. So what is the third one? Strategies. Now, please understand carefully. So many performance management frameworks, whether it is balance scorecard or performance pyramid, whatever it is, they will start with a strategy. Strategy is pretty important. And there's a myth that having identified the strategy of the organization, selecting appropriate performance measure is easy. This is largely because many people confuse strategy and goals. So don't confuse yourself between strategy and goals. Strategy is different, goals are different. In the performance prism, strategy means how the goal will be achieved. So, what is that? Strategy means how the goal will be achieved. Okay? It is the route of the organization that it takes to reach the goal and not the goal itself. So, the thing that you need to understand here is, with respect to the strategy facet of the performance prism, the question that we ask is the question that we ask is what strategies should the organization be adopting to ensure that the wants and needs of its stakeholders are satisfied while ensuring that its own requirements are satisfied too? So, which means it has to show how well the strategies are being implemented, to communicate the strategies with the organization guys, and you also need to encourage the implementation of strategies by the managers, and to see whether if the strategies themselves are still appropriate, or you have to do any, you need to make any changes to those strategies. Are you able to get me? I'll repeat it one more time. So when it comes to strategy, as you know, any performance management framework starts with a strategy. You need to understand the difference between strategy and goals. Strategy means how the goals will be achieved. So here the companies needs to ask one question, and that question is, what strategy should the organization be adopting to ensure that the wants and needs of the stakeholders are satisfied while ensuring that its own requirements are satisfied too. Okay, so once you have identified that, the purpose of these performance measures are four. One is to show how well the strategies are being implemented, to communicate the strategies within the organization, to encourage the implementation of strategies by the managers, and to see whether if the strategies themselves are still what appropriate, or we do need to make any changes to those strategies, right? Now moving on to the next one. The next one is processes. Once you have identified all your strategies, the organization needs to find out if they have the right business process to support the strategy, isn't it? Obviously. So many organizations classify four business processes. One is the first process is you need to develop your products and services. Develop your product and services. This is first process. Second process, you got to generate demand. And third process, you got to fulfill demand. Okay, you got to fulfill demand. And the fourth process is you got to plan and manage the organization or the enterprise. Right? These are all the ultimate process that you have to take care of. Right, Anna? Chalo. And last but not least, we have got something called capabilities. This is the last facet of performance prism. So, what do you mean by capabilities? The capabilities or the we can say capabilities or the people, the practices that is being followed in the company, technology, infrastructure of the company, all these things that is required to enable a process to work. Okay, so that's what you mean capabilities. Capabilities means it's the people, it's the practice, it's the technology, it's the infrastructure which is actually required to enable a process to work. Ultimately, you want the process to work. For the process to work, what are all the things that you need is nothing but what? Capabilities. Right? Now, this Neely and Adams, who has actually given this performance prism, they have provided an example of an audit for cash fulfillment process in an electronic business. uh, this particular process, what process? Cash fulfillment process in electronics business. Cash fulfillment process in electronics business. I'm just trying to give you an example. Suppose there is an order of cash fulfillment process in electronics business. Now this particular process may require the following capabilities. What are the capabilities that they need? The first capability should be customer order handling. The order from the customer must be handled well. Second one should be planning and scheduling. Third one should be procurement of the order. Fourth one should be manufacture the thing. Fifth one should be distribute the thing that you have manufactured. Sixth one should be, obviously it will be on credit, so you got to manage what? Credit. Are you able to get me? This is a perfect example of what kind of capabilities that you need for a particular process. So here the example that we have taken is cash fulfillment process in electronics business. The capabilities that you need are, first one I'll repeat again, customer order handling. Second is planning and scheduling. You procure the raw materials, then you manufacture, then you distribute, and finally you manage the credit. You got this, Nana? Right. I know it is a dry topic, Nana. It's a pretty dry topic, but this is the way it has to be learned, because we cannot write our own words, and moreover, you have to really understand what is the actual concept so that you'll be in a position to apply this for the case study that has been given in your CA study material. So I hope this video has helped you guys. I know it's a bit dry, I can understand that, but that's the way it should be taught. Trust me, that's the way it should be taught. Okay, so that's the reason I did not dilute it, and I tried to explain you the way it should be. Are you able to get me? Right, I hope this video has really helped you guys. As you can see, I'll just try to show you certain things. Right, so yeah, so you can just look at this slide one more time. So that's the 5 phases of the performance prism: stakeholder satisfaction, strategies, processes, capabilities, and stakeholder contribution as well. So I think we have seen that in depth. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Thank you so much. And I want you guys to please, share this video. Let everybody know so that it will help them. People who are writing exams in 2018. I want you guys to share, like, and comment. So tell me, you want any other topic that should be taken up by me at CA final syllabus level, or any other topics in general when it comes to commerce? I'll be ready to do. So keep smiling, right, guys? And all the best.